Hey everybody, MTG Orzo here for PureMTGO.com with this video deck tech for our first commander on our quest for a collection, Sedris the Traitor King. So, if you've read the article this is attached with, then a lot of this will be repeats, but it'll have a little more personal flavor and off-the-cuff commentary that you've come to expect from my videos. If you're watching this and don't know what I'm talking about, I'm writing a series of articles on PureMTGO.com on how to cheaply and efficiently enter the world of EDH Commander on MTGO. So, if you're interested in that, definitely go check out the my beginning article, which will give you a basic package of mana rocks and lands to sort of build your collection. This video is going to go over our first deck, Sedris the Traitor King, and this deck is fun. It's also very cheap. So if you're interested in playing Commander online and really don't want to spend a lot of money, this deck is about 10 tickets all together. If you have already purchased or acquired somehow the land and mana rock package I talked about in the first article, then this, I believe, comes to like 3.5 tickets. It's a steal. A lot of good solid cards are picked up in this deck. If you don't know how the quest for a collection works, is I will be making decks assuming that the player or the reader or the viewer has no cards on MTGO. So every price, I'll give the price to buy it individually, but also give the price for people who have been following the video series and have the cards. So, like I said before, if you have the basic land package and don't want to upgrade your lands like I have, this deck costs about 3.5 tickets. If you do want to make some upgrades to your lands, this deck costs still less than 10 tickets. It's like $9.97 on MTGO Traders. And so basically, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the deck, we're going to talk about it, and hopefully you guys find this hopefully you guys find this enjoyable, or at least informative. This deck, it's not hyper competitive. I believe I've mentioned before, but this series is mostly designed for multiplayer, and ideally it is designed to be played with your friends who are playing similar power level decks. However, these decks can easily be one, they can be upgraded fairly simply, and two, just out of the box, you can go hang out in the multiplayer rooms, and I'd say you have a pretty good time. Like, one person brings a tournament deck there because he went 0-5 in a league or something like that. You're not going to have as good of a time. But in my experience, you find people mostly playing at this power level, maybe a little bit above. But this is, of course, our first deck. Once again, assuming you have no other cards available, feel free to make any changes or adjustments you see fit. So with that out of the way, I'll probably put a timestamp in the description so you can skip that rant if you just want to go ahead and get to the deck text. So, starting off, Sedris the Traitor King, a 6-mana 5/5 legendary zombie warrior. Each creature card in your graveyard has Unearth for 2 and a black. So Unearth is an ability from Alara where it's an activated ability of a creature in a graveyard, and it brings the creature out of the graveyard, gives it haste, and at the end of turn, exile it. I know a lot of people like to get cute with cards like Sundial of the Infinite as a way to end the turn early and keep your cards. I've never been a fan of that. Like, it's something you could very easily throw in there. I just like the idea of Sedris having this army of Grixis colored dudes and then eventually throwing them at somebody. I like that flavor. That's a flavor consideration for me. So let's go over, starting over with lands that were not included in the original land package. So, starting off, we have our 3 check lands from the core sets plus Innistrad. We have Dragon Skull Summit, Drowned Catacomb, and Sulphur Falls somewhere down here. Here we go. Sulphur Falls. So these Obviously, they're better the more lands you have with basic land types. Right now, all we have are basic lands. But obviously, if you have any of the um, like the Battle for Zendikar lands or the new bicycle lands from Amonkhet or shock lands or duels, these check lands like Dragon Skull Summit get much better, but they are at worst a tap land, and at best they are basically basically duels. Next up, we have Exotic Orchard. I really like Exotic Orchard in 3-color multiplayer decks because there's a good chance this is at least going to be a duel. It's always an awkward card to have in your opening hand, but it is a great land to draw as like your third or fourth land. Um, it's just a very, very good card. Reasonably affordable. I think it's about like 60 tickets. It's about the same as a command tower. Next, we have Gaia Reach Sanitarium, legendary land from Eldritch Moon. Basically, you can pay 2, and each player loots, which is draw a card, discard a card. And since we have a less than or a greater than 0 amount of reanimation in our deck, being able to draw a card and pitch our giant monsters like Chaos Maws or Bogarted and Hellkites when we don't need them is pretty good. Also, it's a great political card in multiplayer, letting players who are sort of down on cards sort of filter through their deck and possibly get to where you're going. It's always nice to make friends in multiplayer. Now we also have the filter lands in our colors. We have Graven Cairns. We also have Sunken Ruins and Sunken Ruins, and we have Cascade Bluffs. These are some of the more expensive cards in our deck, but the cycle itself is cheaper than, say, Shocklands. It's one of the few 3-color combinations that are pretty cheap. Cascade Bluffs comes in at about 2.75 tickets. Some of these, like the black green and the black white ones, are like over $10 or over 10 tickets still. So being able to pick some up now is pretty good. I like them. They come into play on tap. We have lots of colorless ramp that you can use it for, and it's also great fixing. It's basically what they're there for, is fixing. We also have Nephalia Drownyard, Control WinCon. This is it's a land, comes into play untapped, and can put cards into your graveyard. It's also nice in the corner cases where you can say someone Enlightened Tutors. Well, you can gack them with Nephalia Drownyard, and you mill the top 3 cards of their library. We've also got Rix Mahdi. When you're in a position with lots of reanimation and cards you don't need, this is like Gaia Reach, except it hurts. They can't draw. They just discard. Everyone discards. And so right now, in this deck, you have your discard parity is greater than 0. You would like to discard in certain situations, and if it's like not an enchantment, so you can choose when to do it. It comes into play untapped and adds a mana. I think that's all the new lands. Obviously, you can suit up your land base. If you've got Underground Scene of Volcanic Islands and all your fetches, then absolutely go throw these in. So starting out with 1-drops, we only have 4. I'm not running Sol Ring in any of the decks for this series because it is a budget list. You can. I'm just trying to get used to playing without Sol Ring. It's always another $1 for people who are coming into the format. I'd rather spend that $1 on other cards. If you want to run a Sol Ring, literally just take out any card and put a Sol Ring in. Like, take Worn Power Stone out, put a Sol Ring in. Take a Felwar Stone out, put a Sol Ring in. The deck will be fine. I'm choosing for this series not to run Sol Rings in the deck, mostly because I'm just trying to get used to playing without it. Because it's banned in 1v1, which is what I play the most in. So I don't want to feel powerful by playing it, only to have it snatched away from me when I change formats. So we have Ponder, just a great card. We could play Preordain. I have a soft spot for Ponder. Sees more cards. Actually, I think it sees the same amount of cards. Yeah, but I like Ponder. Could be a Preordain. I like Ponder. Reanimate, very, very good, just It's really good for getting at your smaller guys, like your Flame Tongue Kavus and stuff like that out. And it's less good when you have to pay almost 10 life to get your Bogart and Hellkite out. You'd rather like Animate Dead or just Sedris out your giant creatures. But Reanimate pulls anything from any graveyard, and you just lose life equal to the converted mana cost. For 1 mana, it's a pretty good steal, and in multiplayer, you can usually snag something pretty spicy. Faithless Looting, it's a way to draw cards and discard cards, flashback. Just a solid red spell. And Lightning Bolt. I run Lightning Bolt in almost every red deck I make. I wrote an article on a list of commanders that Lightning Bolt kills. And it's fairly comprehensive. Lightning Bolt hits a lot of relevant threats in Commander. Less so in multiplayer. I just like the mize factor of having a Lightning Bolt. Obviously, your mileage may vary about this card, but I like Lightning Bolt in red Commander. 2 mana, we have Compulsion, a neat little torment enchantment where you can pitch cards, drawing cards. That's exactly what this deck wants to do. Deranged Assistant, it's a mana dork that puts cards into our graveyard. Merfolk Looter is just another looter, drawing and discarding. One of my favorite things to do in Magic is draw and discard. I love looting. Animate Dead, sort of, this is good for pulling up your big stuff. Once again, it hits every graveyard, so sometimes you can pull out something that might otherwise be unavailable to you. It feels really good to get like a Vorinclex from somebody's graveyard with an Animate Dead. Then we've got some Cathartic Reunion and Tormenting Voice, just red draw, discard. Again, it's what the deck wants to do. Rakdos Charm is just utility. I'm putting this in more and more of my red-black decks, especially multiplayer decks, because of the blowout factor. All of these are relevant in Commander. It's just a great charm. Terminate, just sometimes things have to die, and Terminate really gets you where you're going. Then we've got our Mana Rocks. We added Felwar Stone. I don't believe that was on the initial list of things to buy. I like this in 3-color, especially 3-color big decks. For the same reason I like Gilded Lotus. It's just comes into play untapped and will usually add a mana that you need. Alright, Compulsive Research. One of my favorite blue draw spells. And its sister, Thirst for Knowledge. Drawing cards, discarding cards. I think you're sensing a theme. That's incredibly correct. This deck likes to just filter through all of its cards. Get the good relevant cards you need in your hand. Get your ramp, get your smaller utility creatures, and put your big stuff in the graveyard. Bone Shredder, it's a Doomblade on a guy. Sometimes it's relevant to keep it around, but I have a soft spot for this creature. Buried Alive, one of our best pitching cards. Entomb is banned in 1v1. It is legal here, but it is about $2, so I've kept it off the list for now. Whenever we revisit Sedris with some upgrades, Entomb will be on the list, but Buried Alive will still make the cut. There are no combo piles with Buried Alive in this deck. There's definitely some synergy of like 3 creatures you could get, but there's no explicit combos with Buried Alive other than Sedris and our reanimation package. Read the Bones, incidental card draw. Sudden Spoiling, a great sort of pseudo fog. Can't be responded to a split second. It really just is nice insurance. You always feel really safe when you have Sudden Spoiling up in multiplayer. Doesn't do anything against Craterhoof Behemoth though, so watch out for that. Academy Raider, just a neat guy I'm trying out for multiplayer. He gets in for some incidental damage, and he rummages, which is the opposite of looting, where you discard and then draw. But, does Sedris things. Manic Vandal, it's a guy that nukes an artifact when he comes into play. Unfulfilled Desires, one of my favorite Magic cards. You pay 1 in a life and draw a card, discard a card. It's just great for cycling through your hand. Then we've got some Mana Rocks. Those are not interesting. Factor Fiction, one of the best blue draw spells. It gets a lot more fun politically when you can play it in multiplayer than just in 1v1. Rite of Replication, it's a win condition with cards like Bogart and Hellkite. But just, it's multiplayer, you're going to have so many targets for this card, so usually you want to hang on to it to cast with Kicker. Sometimes you can cast it as a weird, like, token clone thing, and that's okay. There's no ways in this deck to get back instants and sorceries, I don't think. So you gotta kind of think before you do this. Disciple of Bolus, life gain and card draw, sack things that are on their way to the exile zone with Sedris, or cards you don't need anymore that have already done its job, like Flametongue Kavu, get them back later with Sedris. Just gain some life, get some cards, it's great. Flesh Writher, it's an interesting card that I'm playing with. I've never played with this card before until this deck, but it transmutes, it transfigures, which is the permanent base version of Transmute, and it gets a lot of things in our deck. Like, it gets Disciple of Bolus, it gets Gaunty, Whip, Flametongue Kavu, Heart Piercer, Manticore, Dax Duplicant. Lots of utility. A lot of our utility guys are at 4 mana. Being able to get double use out of this with Sedris just seems pretty good. And, you know, at worst, it's a 3/3 body, but usually you're going to be able to find something pretty good with this. Gaunty, just a fun multiplayer card. Playing people's cards is always fun. Being able to do it multiple times with Reanimation and Sedris is better. Whip is just a really good way of getting back our life loss to some of our abilities, and, you know, get stuff out of our graveyard. It basically Sedris is one thing a turn, and gain back life. It's a scary card. When this thing comes down, it sort of warps casual games around it. Flametongue Kavu, one of my favorite cards in Magic. It's just a very well-costed creature for its effect. You know, 4 mana, 4/2 that flame slashes something. It's great. It's a great thing to reanimate with Sedris. It's a great early game play against a lot of commanders. It's a card that's very near and dear to my heart. Heart Piercer Manticore, speaking of hearts and Flametongue Kavu, this is sort of a Flametongue Kavu. I'm actually very pleased with how this card is working in this deck. It sacks things sort of like Disciple of Bolus. It sacks things that are on the way to exile with Sedris, things you want to rebuy with your reanimation, and it does damage. It can also hit people in the face instead of just creatures, which gives it sort of a leg up on Flametongue Kavu. These two, by the way, play incredibly nicely together. Dax Duplicant, it's our clone because it has haste, and Dethrone, which is incidental in this deck, but Dethrone is a neat mechanic. The haste clone is really what makes this very nice. Muldrifter, drawing cards, puts itself into the graveyard. You can divination with it, then reanimate it with Sedris as a body. It's just a staple of blue. Speaking of the evoke creatures, we've got Shriekmaw to kill a guy, and Ingot Chewer to kill an artifact. All follow the same principles as Muldrifter. Sphinx of Lost Truths is great because it draws 3, discards 3, but if you just pay Kicker, then it just Ancestral Recalls. It's great with Sedris, especially like chaining Sedris when you have a lot of mana. Reanimating Sphinx of Lost Truths draws you 3 and then puts 3 new cards in the graveyard for Sedris. That's a very, very good card for this deck. Sedisi, it's our one tutor in the deck outside of Planar Portal or Planar Bridge. Where are you? Sedisi, it sacks things we don't need, sacks itself, puts things in the graveyard, puts itself in the graveyard. Just a very, very, very good card. And, a 4/6 Death Touch can hold the ground pretty well. I don't think anyone's going to argue against that. Goblin Dark Dwellers is phenomenal in this deck. A lot of our instants and sorceries that we want to rebuy are 3 or less, and like hitting a buried when you this is basically the one combo with Buried Alive in the deck. Is the first time you Buried Alive, you almost always want to get Goblin Dark Dwellers because it means unless your graveyard is wiped, you will get to rebuy your Buried Alive, which makes Buried Alive into 5 cards instead of 3. So Goblin Dark Dwellers is the one concession to sort of abusing Buried Alive. But sometimes you just have to terminate or something like that, and this does that admirably. Wolf of Devil's Breach. Trying out this card. You can discard a card. It also just hits them in the face with the converted mana cost, so it puts things into the graveyard and rewards you for putting big things in the graveyard later for your reanimation. Gilded Lotus Ramp. Alright, big guys. Geralf's Mind Crusher. It's just a big titan that puts things in the graveyard and comes back as a 6/6. Very nice. Noxious Gear Hulk comes in, nukes a guy, you gain some life. Menace is actually surprisingly relevant a lot of the times. Just a very solid all-around card. Combustible Gear Hulk, the mind games in Commander of, do I let them draw 3 or do I put 3 into the graveyard and take a million? Both modes work well with Sedris, which is why Combustible Gear Hulk makes its way into this list. Crater Hellion, just sort of a big wrath guy that you can bring out. Unfortunately, it kills Sedris, but if you're playing this, you usually need to. If you don't want to kill Sedris and want to just wipe the board of some little guys, Hour of Devastation gave us Chaos Maw with some fucking radical art. I'm sorry, I shouldn't swear. It has some great art, and this card is basically just a souped up Crater Hellion. You get to keep it around. Kills less things, but still kills lots of little guys. Both of these cards are great to reanimate. Duplicant exiles guy. Sometimes you gotta exile. Planar Bridge. Testing out this card in this deck, we have a lot of ways to make a lot of mana. And, when you're low on cards, just being able to pull out threat after threat, eventually just reanimating them with Sedris, it is a win condition, so it's a very, very neat card. Ingester is the blue duplicant, one of my favorite cards. Just good removal, makes a big dude, sometimes. Great thing to like fling with Sedris. Diluvian Primordial, we're running all the Primordials in here because they're great reanimation targets and just casting targets in multiplayer. Usually you're going to get maximum value out of this one. This one casts an instant or sorcery from every opponent's graveyard. Sepulchre gets a creature from every opponent's graveyard, and Molten Primordial threatens a creature from every player. Great targets to play and reanimate. We talked about Chaos Maw. Now the final card, Bogarden Hellkite. It's a Flametongue Kavu with wings and flash. Incidental wing condition with Rite of Replication. Flash means you do 10, then you reanimate with Sedris, swing. That's another 10. That's 20 damage in one card. It's a very, very, very good dragon. Very cheap as well. So, everyone, that is the deck. I hope you enjoy this. I really like Sedris, so building him lots of different ways is always fun for me. If you enjoyed this and want to get into Magic, or not necessarily Magic, but Commander on Magic Online, I do recommend you check out the articles for this Commander and the sort of the primer I did for Land and Mana Base. I will put both of those links in the description. Make sure you guys check out puremtgo.com for all of your MTGO related news and articles. All of my cards I've purchased from MTGO traders. I've never had a bad deal on MTGO traders. So when I talk about costs and everything in the article, that's all using TCG, or not TCG, but MTGO traders prices. So yeah, that's the deck. If you guys have any questions or any suggestions, feel free to leave a comment on here or on the article series, or just shoot me a message on MTGO. I'd love to hear from you guys, and I'll see you next time.